MotoGP is back in Thailand as the countdown to world title glory continues. There's a special buzz in Buriram as title contenders Quartararo, Bagnaia and Aleix Espargaro lock horns at the destination of speed. All to play for with 4 races remaining. It's time to race in MotoGP. So great to be back at the Chang International Circuit for the first time in 3 years. 4.55 kilometres in length, 2.830 miles, 7 right turns, 5 of them left. We're not going to be getting any lap records broken here today as the rain has hit this part of northeastern Thailand. A delayed and then eventually abandoned Moto2 race just has been declared a result a few months ago. This was the last lap thriller. Both races here in Buriram and MotoGP have gone down to the wire. List to the roars of the crowd as Marc Marquez took it at turn 12 for Fabio Quartararo to clinch his 8th world title. Coming up next then in MotoGP, a first MotoGP pole is just what the doctor ordered as Valentino Rossi's boy Bezzecchi is poleman number 10 in 2022. Pecco Bagnaia has ominous race pace as he looks for win number 7 of 2022 from 3rd. World champion Fabio Quartararo is fired up for another Ducati duel starting from 4th. And it's been tough in Thailand for Aleix Espargaro as he goes into damage limitation mode from 13th. Good afternoon then and welcome back to the OR Grand Prix of Thailand. A slight delay to our MotoGP coverage as that picture tells the story of what's become a truncated afternoon of action here in Thailand. We had a full dry Moto3 race to kick off our 17th race day of 2022. High drama and a delayed and then eventually abandoned Moto2 race that's just been completed. No spoilers here as we get set now for MotoGP action. Light rain, it says, currently falling on this Chang International Circuit. Those dark and grey clouds have been throwing some torrential rain over the last hour or so here in Buriram. The MotoGP race, 26 laps. It's due to get underway at 3 p.m. local time. That's just under 12 minutes time. But as you can see, there is rain still falling here in Buriram. As soon as we have any updates about whether that race start will go ahead as planned, we'll bring it to you. Pit lane open has been delayed. So, of course, this is a rapidly changing situation here at the Chang International Circuit. Matt Burt, Lewis Sotheby and Simon Crayford to bring you all the live coverage here from Buriram. And, of course, going into what will now surely be, well, it will be a wet weather Thailand Grand Prix. We have to note that there's been not a single wet lap for the MotoGP riders to tackle this 4.55 kilometre Buriram circuit so far this weekend. Now that really has thrown a spanner in the works, hasn't it? World champion Fabio Quartararo then will come to the grid, starting 4th place, fighting a lone battle again against the swarm of factory Ducatis. He's the only non-Ducati that will start this 26-lap race inside the top 7 places on the grid.
Yeah, when we get a news and a new schedule on when this race is going to get underway, we will update you. The positive news that we can bring you is looking into the distance past beyond turn 3, which before the end of our Moto2 coverage we could barely see over there. It is now a lot more visible over in that part of Buriram. So hopeful that even though we are delayed, we will be getting underway at some stage. Marc Marquez looking on. He'll certainly be relishing these conditions. He was so good in the wet back at Motegi 1 week ago when he, of course, started and qualified on pole position. Very much the other end of the scale to this man, Pecco Bagnaia, who, credit to him, takes the time to pose for a photograph with one of the many Thai fans who have packed this Chang International Circuit. Bagnaia was awful, it has to be said, in the wet conditions of qualifying last weekend in Motegi. You'll certainly be hoping it's a different story here this weekend in Buriram if he's to keep his championship hopes on track.
It's been a horror show so far in 2022 in wet conditions for Pecco Bagnaia. He took a solitary point in the torrential rain conditions at Mandalika in Indonesia at round 2. Last weekend in those wet conditions in Motegi, he described his pace as unacceptable. His heart would have sank, wouldn't it, having seen the rain start to fall just over an hour ago here in Bangkok, in Buriram. Great here, fantastic for Marco Bezzecchi, the poleman, with all the nerves and apprehension coming to his first pole position in the MotoGP World Championship, still taking time to sign a couple of autographs and post some pictures outside that Mooney VR46 Racing Team garage. In the dry conditions yesterday, this man nailed a perfect final sector and final corner to deliver an all-time lap record of 1:29.671 to break a new MotoGP pole position record, our 10th different rider to start from pole position in 2022. Ducati's 13th of 17 Grand Prix so far this year, but this is a completely different ball game. A full wet Buriram Grand Prix here in Prospect in Thailand. You can see Fabio Quartararo, he's not expecting the pit lane to be open anytime soon. He's got the team uniform back on, he's dropped the leathers around his waist, so Fabio Quartararo just gets the earbuds in, just trying to relax, keep himself calm ahead of what will be probably a delayed 26-lap Buriram battle.
He leads the World Championship, of course, by 18 points ahead of Pecco Bagnaia. Still a long way away from the World Championship being won, but this is exactly the kind of day where World Championships could potentially be lost in these conditions, where mistakes are so easy to make in the most challenging of conditions these MotoGP riders are going to face. So important to be mistake-free here. Fabio Quartararo, of course, will have an eye on Bagnaia. He starts one place behind him on the grid. We saw Enea Bastianini walking into this very box, the Gresini MotoGP box. He will start this afternoon's Grand Prix from the back of the second row. 6 Ducatis in the top 7 places on the grid. The only non-Ducati, of course, is the world champion. 7th on the grid, just as he was 7 days ago in Motegi, was our Japanese Grand Prix winner, Jack Miller. Conditions that he normally revels in, normally excels in. Let's not forget as well, Miguel Oliveira, our wet weather winner in Mandalika at the start of the season. He starts from 11th place. We know how good Marc Marquez is in rain conditions. And let's not forget who is on the factory Suzuki, replacing Juan Mir, the 2020 world champion, who's still absent through injury. Danilo Petrucci, who was always one of the strongest riders in wet weather conditions. Of course, a big journey into the unknown for him. He's never ridden that GSX-RR in rain conditions, but you wouldn't put it past Petrucci to come through and fight for the podium in these demanding conditions. Absolutely nothing for him to lose. He was the rainmaster, well, at both KTM and on the Ducati in particular. His best result last season on the KTM was in a wet Grand Prix. I think that was in Le Mans. But don't discount Petrucci coming from the back of the grid on that factory Suzuki in these very inclement conditions. Yes, you say his second and last MotoGP victory did come in wet conditions at Le Mans. Absolutely zero to lose for him. Zero to lose too for Jorge Martin, who starts from the middle of the front row in second place. He was quite keen to point out yesterday, he starts from second on the grid. He's got Marco Bezzecchi ahead of him, of course, on the grid, who's entering a relatively brand new experience. It's not his first front row, but it is his first pole. But as far as Martin's concerned, the rider directly next to him on the grid, Pecco Bagnaia, and Fabio Quartararo just behind, they will have to think of the World Championship today, he says. I don't. I can just go for it. 25 points cover our top 3 men in this MotoGP World Championship going into this round 17. It's Quartararo that has the advantage. He's 18 clear of closest rival Bagnaia. Aleix Espargaro is the man third, 25 points behind. Jack Miller then, he won't be bothered about these rain conditions, always strong in a wet weather scenario, isn't he, the Australian? Massive week coming up for him to complete what's been a dream week. The race winner in Japan in utterly dominant fashion, wasn't he, 7 days ago? A performance that Jack Miller himself didn't think he had in his locker. He delivered it when it mattered the most. A stunning charge through from 7th to 1st last time around. Well, history repeats itself here today as he heads that third row and looking for a big win or a big result to take home to Australia. He gets married, he ties it up with his good lady fiancée Ruby Mao in Townsville next week. All the best to the happy couple in the future. Step into the unknown for everyone today, including Johann Zarco here, who will start from the middle of the second row in 5th position. He's another of the riders that you have to say has very little to lose here today. Has shown in the past in wet conditions that he is no slouch. He was very quick in the wet in Indonesia at the start of the season. At one point looked as if he was going to charge his way up into the podium positions. He ended up finishing that race inside the top 5. But for Johann Zarco, he'll certainly be eyeing up a charge towards the front here. This is where the rain is coming in from. You can see it just in the foreground of the picture. This is the direction it's approaching from, into turn 3. During the Moto2 race that preceded this, it was at this part of the racetrack where we saw it in particular really bucketing it down. So if and when we do get underway, as you can see there on screen, the heavy rain falling, it will be at that far end of the circuit from where we are in the main grandstand, the start-finish straight. It will be there that the rain will first start to come over this Chang International Circuit.
Well, at this stage of what we hope would have been a dry race day here in Thailand, we'd have been getting the 5-minute board and 5 minutes away from the start of the 26-lap Grand Prix. That clearly is not going to happen, as Alex Rins does the breaststroke there. Yeah, that's pretty apt, isn't it? An appropriate gesture from the Suzuki man. He's got some fans, a small pocket of Rins fans in the grandstands here. One good thing about Buriram is all the grandstands are undercover, and that has been the order of the day here this weekend. Yeah, here, speedy recovery there to 2020 world champion Juan Mir, still sidelined, struggling to recover fully from that really nasty fracture he had in that right angle, the first lap crash at the Red Bull Ring in Austria. Taken in his place this weekend, of course, is Danilo Petrucci. Now then, we just mentioned about Miguel Oliveira already showing wet weather prowess and race-winning pedigree in not too dissimilar conditions in Mandalika right at the start of the season. There'll be big expectations for Oliveira coming through from 11th place on the grid, and Brad Binder also strong wet weather rider. Let's get some pre-race thoughts from Red Bull Catering Factory Racing Team boss Francesco. We've got to with Simon.
Yes, I am with Francesco. The rain's still falling lightly at the moment. Francesco, things have totally changed now, looking at the race from dry to wet. Both of your boys are fast in the rain, but I'd love to hear your thoughts if it does, well, here it goes again, raining, but your thoughts going into the race.
Yeah, first safety. I mean, we have to think about the safety of the rider, and at the moment it doesn't look like they will be safe on track, so we have to wait and wait until the rain stops, or the track condition will be fine. But yeah, it's a shame. We were waiting for rain yesterday and before yesterday. Doesn't happen. Didn't come. And for today, weather forecast was pretty good. So yeah, at the end we had all the practice dry, and today is this surprise. But yeah, keep focused. Let's try to do our best. Try to be ready in any condition always, and will be hard for the riders for sure.
I was just thinking, how hard is it for the team? You know, all of the members changing all bike settings and getting things ready. How busy is it?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's full wet, so it's very difficult to understand when it starts to rain, light rain, and then dry up. But now it's pretty clear. Will be wet, and then 2 bikes wet setup, and we'll see.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to Simon Crowfar, thanks to KTM boss Francesco Guidotti. Yeah, their 2 men will come charging through from that 4th row of the grid. Aleix Espargaro then. Is these rain conditions playing into his hands a little bit? Because in the dry, this man has been all at sea so far this weekend. No rear grip with that harder carcass Michelin rear tyre designed to cope with the excessive heat generated in a dry race. Clearly we're not going to get a dry race here now this afternoon. A race delayed due to weather conditions, and as Francesco Guidotti just pointed out there, the weather forecasts in Buriram have been absolutely dreadful this weekend, because we expected rain at some point Friday, Saturday. We didn't really get it, apart from a spell on Friday morning, which wasn't really any significant disruption. My weather forecast this morning when I woke up, I was pretty happy. I thought, no rain, awesome, a nice dry race day. Not that's the case. Yes,
yeah,
that's gone out the window.
Certainly turned on us, hasn't it? And as I said to you a moment ago, in the distance, we could see the distance into turn 3, which we couldn't a few minutes prior. We can't see that distance yet. It's very much a mist of heavy rain. The one thing that we can maybe hang on to in terms of this rain clearing through is that there's a good wind that's picking up, and the rain that has been coming through has tended to blow through as well pretty quickly. It just depends on how much rain is on its way to us and how long this delay is going to be. Pol Espargaro, I don't think he'll be too disappointed at the moment to see these conditions. He's had a really tough time of late, hasn't he? Qualified down in 19th position on the grid, and that's really been a bit of a recurring story for Pol Espargaro. Hasn't started in the top 10 since the Catalan Grand Prix all the way back in June. He really does need a fresh start, which is what he's going to get next season when he moves back home in some respects to the Tech 3 squad, into this pit box, which will be, of course, rebranded as the Gas team. It's not just my colleague Matt Burt who's been a little unwell this weekend. Ralph Hernandez has also been suffering with a bit of an upset stomach, which didn't stop him putting in a pretty heroic qualifying performance yesterday.
I've been fine, declared fit, rider okay for the weekend so far. It's just race day where, yeah, been laid low by a little bit of a stomach upset.
Ralph Hernandez, 16th he will start for today's Thai Grand Prix. Of course, his previous best going into this weekend on the grid was 21st. His Saturdays have not been particularly stellar in 2022. Sat out free practice 3 yesterday morning because he was in such difficulty with that illness, which kept him up all night on Thursday night and then didn't leave him in particularly good shape for Friday. But he is in pretty good shape here for race day. Ralph Hernandez, certainly not at peak physical condition, but he will start from 16th position on the grid when this race gets underway. The best of his rookie career so far. Well,
of course, the teams and riders will be well aware that they're going to have a wet MotoGP race here in Thailand to contend with, but what do you need to do to change the bike to a wet setup? A particular challenge for the Olin suspension technicians. Nobody better, nobody more experienced in pit lane than Graham Irvine. Has been around for so many years. Top guy, top suspension engineer, part of the factory Suzuki operation for so many years. I'm delighted to say, joining Graham right now down in pit lane with Simon Crayford.
He is, and I don't often get a chance to talk to the technicians on race day, so thank you, Graham, for your time. Graham and I used to work together in the Olin's truck, and I mean, like Matt was just saying, you've been around for a lot of years, got a heap of experience. Tell us what are the possible, we don't want to dig into what exactly you do, I know you can't say, but give us all the possible changes that you can do from dry to wet.
Oh, basically, Simon, we try to mimic what the bike does in the dry condition, try and get the bike into the same sort of positions with minimal effort, because you can't obviously brake the same way in the wet condition as you can in the dry to force the bike into position. So we try to just achieve the same turning, same feeling for the rider. By doing this, we soften off springs, open up damping a little bit just to free things up, and like we say, we go maybe a flatter link just to calm things down and make the bike look a lot more stable and predictable.
Graham, thank you for your time, and good luck with both Alex Rins and Danilo Petrucci, your riders today.
Fingers crossed. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, thanks to Graham Irvine. Thanks to Simon Crayford. This man, then, you do just get a feeling that these are conditions that are tailor-made, aren't they, for Danilo Petrucci. In the past, when we had extreme wet weather conditions, you could always kind of bank on Marc Marquez, Andrea Dovizioso and Danilo Petrucci being your star men, your front runners in rain conditions in MotoGP. It would have been a taxing physical race for Petrucci in the dry, having not ridden a MotoGP bike since last November in Valencia, coming into this replacement ride for Joan Mir, but with nothing to lose. Petrucci's going to be charging his way through that field, isn't he? I suppose the only issue when you're starting at the back in these conditions will be the spray and the visibility, how quickly you can fight your way through. A rider of some pretty good prowess in wet weather conditions. Well, is this man, Cal Crutchlow. I don't suppose Cal's going to be too upset about it being wet. Of course, it does increase the risk factor. Easy to crash when we have these kind of conditions, but less physical on the body. And Crutchlow has battered and bruised, to say the least. Heavy swelling, his right ankle black and blue after a very heavy fall on Friday in FP2.
His first MotoGP victory, of course, came in wet conditions. Brno back in 2017, the historic first British victory of the 21st century in the Premier class. So Cal Crutchlow certainly won't be phased. The conversations, the deep conversations going on inside the Yamaha box.
So it's shortening the whole thing. Shortening the whole thing. So that you're not on the grid so long, but you've got 10 minutes to come in and out. So basically shortening sitting on the grid.
That's what we need to do.
So we just want to listen there to Representative Tony Congram, just relaying some information to the factory Yamaha team, current world champion leader Fabio Quartararo. Yeah, we are going to get eventually a 20-minute grid procedure. Quite when that will happen, we're not precisely sure, of course. everybody in the paddock is reacting to the rapidly changing conditions here, so there will be a 20-minute grid procedure.
And an important point to add to that, as we heard the conversation, I think that's what Fabio Quartararo and his team were just being told there, is that when the pit lane opens for the riders to go out to the grid, the pit lane will be open for 10 minutes, which will essentially give the riders probably a chance to go around back into pit lane maybe 3 or 4 times to just explore the conditions, understand what the grip levels are before they have to finally pull up on the grid.
Well, we've already had a 5-minute delay, haven't we? We were due to be probably on lap 2 or 3 now in this OR Grand Prix of Thailand, but it feels like a long, long way away from getting the race underway here in Buriram. There is Marco Bezzecchi, the pole man. Great lap. He could do that final corner, that final sector, another 1,000 times here this weekend in Buriram, and he will not do it any better than what he did right at the most decisive point in Q2 yesterday. That's been, though, the story of the last couple of hours or so, hasn't it, here at the Chang International Circuit? Heavy rain, intermittent at times. It fell at its worst in the Moto2 race, which was stopped and then shortened to 16 laps. And then we were hoping for a 5-lap dash for cash, a sprint race, which didn't happen as the rain conditions deteriorated on the warm-up lap for that sprint race. I'm surprised we haven't seen the Suzuki rubber duck just as yet. I'm sure it's going to come out at some point.
We did hear from one of the riders who fortunately had some misfortune in the Moto2 race. Following that race, we heard an interview with one of them, and he did tell us that the grip levels out there were actually pretty good in the wet conditions, similar to what we heard back at Mandalika for the Indonesian Grand Prix, the second round of the season, a circuit that again also produced pretty good grip in wet conditions. So when the race does get underway, even if the rain does continue to fall, as long as it's not at the monsoon levels that brought about this delay, grip levels are pretty good. And if we ever get into a stage where the rain stops completely, it is worth noting that this track does also dry out pretty quickly. It's still very, very warm here in this part of the world, and if we do get a bit of wind as well, and of course 25 MotoGP bikes going around at pretty high speed, a dry line has tended to appear pretty quickly. It's worth reminding you, this race is going to get underway in wet conditions, but if it does, we could quite easily see flag-to-flag rules come into play.
We'll try and see the glass half full at this stage. It just looks like the rain is easing off ever so slightly for the first time in a good half an hour or so, maybe even longer. I can actually now see out of our commentary box window, off in the distance, turn number 3, because that was completely covered in heavy rain not that long ago. Fabio Quartararo looking relatively relaxed, despite the high pressure situation that's facing him coming up very, very shortly. He was very, very strong. Second place, wasn't he, from pole position in Mandalika. The Thai fans and fans from all over the world, somebody's got a souvenir, haven't they? I think that's one of the gloves of a Moto2 Park Fermé rider. We won't give away any spoilers, but well, we've got this little bit of a lull in proceedings, of course. A new season opener in 2023 in the Algarve Resort Circuit in Portimao. 21 races, our longest World Championship calendar next season, including the new sprint race edition on Saturday afternoons. The debut of the Kazakhstan Grand Prix on July the 9th, subject to homologation, and we can't wait, can we, the first ever Indian GP in Delhi. Well, that will be on September the 24th, start of a very hectic overseas tour to complete the 2023 MotoGP World Championship. 21 races with the additions of Kazakhstan and India. A couple of other dates for your diaries. The season will get underway in Portimao on March the 26th. Kazakhstan, our first visit, July the 9th. India, September the 24th. And the season will finish in Valencia on the 26th of November. No wonder Anea Bastianini is trying to get some tips here from that man. Ratapat Willerot, the former Grand Prix rider, former Supersport podium man around this circuit as well. He'll know what the current grip levels and track conditions are like. Great to see Ratapat back in the paddock, soaking up the atmosphere, albeit a wet atmosphere here in his home Grand Prix.
Quite a relaxed discussion going on there between Marc Marquez and his team manager Alberto Puig. Marquez will certainly have no fear of these conditions. As we told you earlier on in the broadcast, that pole position a week ago at the Japanese Grand Prix at Motegi. Let's get a look then as the safety car goes around the circuit. He's just going over to the edge of the racetrack there and seeing what sort of standing water is lying on the outside of the circuit and on the grass. And as you can see there was plenty of it. This is one of the back straights. This is out of turn 3 down towards turn 4 as we now cut into the Muni Fiat 46 box. Marco Bezzecchi, the pole man, I think was as keen as anyone there to see what kind of conditions that the safety car was experiencing as Marco Bezzecchi, our record pole sitter, our 10th different pole sitter of the year, gets ready to take the start from the very front of the grid.
Another record broken in this record-breaking MotoGP season. 10 different pole sitters, as we mentioned. The Cati is the bike to be on for one lap in this year's World Championship, isn't it? Their 13th pole position yesterday, the 6th time in 2022 with Martin and Bagnaia on that front row with Bezzecchi that they've locked out the front row. It's now 37 successive races that the Cati have had at least one bike on the front row of the grid. Their podium record's pretty impressive as well, isn't it? Having a quick look, they've had at least one bike on the podium in the last 22 Grand Prix, which is a new record. Those stats don't really bother senior Ducati management. They certainly don't bother Pecco Bagnaia. There's only one stat that they want, only one record they want to be broken, and that's winning this rider title this year in MotoGP. It's been 15 now, long years, since Casey Stoner did it back in 2007. Of course, we go to Phillip Island in 2 weeks' time, a place that Casey Stoner made it his own. Well, there is downtown Buriram, population of just over 27,000. The city of happiness, it translates to in Thailand. Who'll be happiest on the planes back to Bangkok tonight and tomorrow at the end of this delayed MotoGP race? Will Fabio Quartararo be increasing his 18-point lead in the World Championship over Pecco Bagnaia? Will Marc Marquez be delighting those 93 fans always in this part of Southeast Asia? Marquez has a raft of support and he's trying to make it 3 wins in a row here in Buriram. Undefeated on Thai soil is the Repsol Honda star.
Well, cast your minds back to our last wet weather Grand Prix back in the second round of the season in March in Mandalika. It was won, of course, by Miguel Oliveira. So keep an eye out for him. He goes from the 4th row of the grid, both himself and Brad Binder. No slouches in wet conditions. Brad Binder, of course, second race of the season on that factory KTM. He finished in 8th position, despite the fact that his rear ride height device was stuck on for the entire Grand Prix. So certainly he knows what he's doing in wet conditions. He's probably the one rider in this field who would be looking at this thinking, I can go out on slicks.
Yeah, that's it. Give us a smile. Yeah, the fans are being very, very patient here in Thailand. They've had to wait 3 years to see the world's elite riders tackle this 4.55 kilometre circuit. So maybe another half an hour or so won't hurt too much. Now that we mentioned Cal Crutchlow, battered and bruised, but a strong wet weather rider previously in his Grand Prix career. The With You Yamaha RNF man goes from 15th. His teammate Darren Binder, who was very strong in the rain in Mandalika, 23rd. Let's hear the thoughts of With You Yamaha RNF team boss Wilco Zeelenberg in pit lane with Simon.
Yeah, I always enjoy hearing the thoughts of Wilco, because Wilco is a World Championship rider, then rider coach for guys like Jorge Lorenzo, and now team manager. Can you give us an idea what the guys are going through and what your concerns are about the race?
Well, first of all the predictions were wrong, so we should have had, dry race actually and some rain in the practices, but actually it went opposite way around. But the boys are quite relaxed, the circumstances are of course far from ideal. Big showers are coming, and normally a big shower is a big shower. When it's gone, it's gone. We can go to the grid and start this race, but every 5 or 10 minutes a new one is coming. Yeah, and that worries me a bit, because we will soon running out of time, and if there is too much water on the track, it's too dangerous to start, clearly.
If we do get away, I'm curious, how are your riders in the rain? I know Carl has been very good before. He is a little bit battered around from that big effort that he put in, and had made a high side, but then great qualifying after that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, Carl is an English rider, and all the English blokes they are learned to race bikes in the wet, So
and the Dutch don't.
Yeah, the Dutch as well, but we don't have a Dutchie basically in MotoGP at the moment. So, and Darren did great in Mandalika, finishing 10th, his best result in a MotoGP race. So let's wait and see. It's all a big gamble, and hopefully, the track is just wet and the conditions are equal for everybody, and no strange red flags or accidents, because I think that's priority number one.
Last thought is your machine in the rain. A few years ago, even 12 months ago, there was, everybody's had a big sigh there, like something was going on. The Yamaha wasn't so strong in the wet. What is it like now? Have you made changes? Is it better?
Yeah, clearly there has been some adjustments are done, and in Mandalika I think it was already clear. Fabio was very fast at the end of the race. He closed up, he made the best lap of the race, he finished second on the podium, and Darren was 10th. So I think when the conditions are warm and wet, it's fine, but when it's cold and wet, we struggle a bit more.
Wilco, thank you for your time. Good luck this afternoon.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks to Wilco Zeelenberg. Somebody having fun in the BMW safety car there.
He dropped it at turn 3.
Spinning it up, lighting up the rear, going through turn 3. Pecco Bagnaia, I think, looking a little bit envious there. Fancy a little bit of play out there on 4 wheels right now. Certainly not on 2 wheels as we continue this rain delay due to weather conditions. We are now almost 15 minutes beyond what we hope would be our scheduled start for this OR Grand Prix of Thailand. Still no confirmation on when we will get that pit lane opening for 10 minutes and then the 20-minute grid procedure. Johan Zarco not exactly looking particularly happy with life on Sunday afternoon here. He starts from P5, the number 5. Do these wet conditions present him with a golden opportunity to finally break his winning duck in the MotoGP World Championship? This race here in Thailand due to be race start number 101 in the Premier Class 4. Zarco, he's found his way to the podium 15 times previously, but still never on the top step of the rostrum.
Pecco Bagnaia is cheering the safety car on. The only on-track action that we've got at the moment. Pecco is certainly enjoying himself and seems reasonably relaxed before this race ultimately gets underway. It's this part of the racetrack, I think, that the particular problems will lie. The run down to turn 3, and you can also, when we look at a sort of external shot like this one, you'll be able to see on the grass at the side of the racetrack just how much rain has fallen, because the sides of the racetrack are almost waterlogged, particularly on the run down from turn 3 to turn 4. And also looking outside our commentary box window, the grass over to the side of the main straight is essentially a big puddle at the moment. So that is one particular issue, and that really does give you a good idea of how much rain has fallen. But it is falling much more lighter now, if at all, down on the start-finish straight, and it is going to be, I think, important, a bit like in Mandalika earlier in the season, to just identify a window, when the window comes that the rain has eased off, to make sure we get out there and get racing.
Well, as we mentioned, these fans have had to wait 3 years to see the best riders power their best motorcycles in the world around this Buriram circuit. 76,800 of them are packed into Buriram here today, and as you'd expect, having waited so long to see a MotoGP race, they're staying put. The grandstands are still packed to the rafters as we wait patiently for the ease up in these conditions. Let's go down to pit lane again. Simon Crafar is joined by Sam Lowes, who had to contend with some very, very tricky and treacherous conditions in that stopped and then delayed and eventually abandoned Moto2 encounter earlier on today. Let's pop down to pit lane then. Simon Crafar with Britt Sam Lowes.
I am, Sam. We won't spoil the results for those who haven't seen it, but can you give us an idea what it's like to ride out there in the wet since you did the race?
Yeah, of course. In the race, we was a little bit further back. So the first, well, all the laps I did actually, in the straight, I couldn't even go full throttle, and that's with the Moto2. You know, we're spinning a lot, aquaplaning a lot, and yeah, some corners were good. The grip was relatively okay, honestly, but the standing water was horrific. It was the worst I've ever ridden in, and yeah, it was the right call to red flag it. And hopefully, we're looking here where we can see, and one side looks good, one side looks real dark. So hopefully the good side comes this way and we can get this race underway. But yeah, the grip's real grippy, so that's positive. So the grip's not bad. It's just the standing water is obviously the issue.
Hey, one other thing, visibility and how you keep your visor clean. You know, I'm sure it's improved since my day. Can you tell us about that?
You know, it's improved a lot. I had no real issues with the steaming up or the water staying in the visor. HJC did a good job with the system, with the fog city, keeping some vents open. But yeah, once you're 6, 7, 8 riders deep, you can't see nothing to in the straight. The first 2 laps are real dangerous. If somebody had gone down early on, would have been a big issue. So that's always the same in obviously in rain conditions, but it seems like a lot of the standing water, a lot of the worst places were down the 2 straights actually, especially down the first straight and then coming back as you enter turn 4 at that point. So they were the worst points. So yeah, early on in the race that was definitely an issue. But as we're talking here, it actually looks like the good weather's coming, so that'll be, hopefully we can get racing soon.
Sam, thank you very much for your time.
Cheers, Si.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks to Sam Lowe's and so reporting after that weather-disrupted Moto2 race. High grip levels. He's getting a rock star reception here, isn't he, Marc Marquez? As we mentioned, there's an army of 93 fans out in force here today. Yeah.
Louder.
Yeah, louder, louder. Come on, he loves this, doesn't he, Marc Marquez? Yeah. And the crowd, they do respond. What a reception. That young lady there in the middle of your picture, she's going to be hoarse, isn't she, later on this afternoon? She's going to be running out of voice, giving the old vocal cords a big test there as she shows her unquestionable support for the 8 times world champion. Memorable Grand Prix here last time out in Buriram. He threw it all on the line, that last lap battle, the nail-biting final corner thriller with Fabio Quartararo. Didn't need to take such big risks, but he wanted to be crowned 2019 world champion from the top step of the podium. That's exactly how he did it. Another classic battle here in Buriram. We steam well will get one. It will be a wet one, but fingers crossed we are going to get the full race completed at some point later on this afternoon.
It is wonderful to see Marc Marquez so relaxed and so happy. Of course, he's had such a turbulent last 3 years, dating all the way back to that huge crash in the opening Grand Prix of the 2020 season in Jerez and the succession of surgeries on that right arm. He's now finally at a point in MotoGP in 2022 after that 4th surgery, which took him out of the World Championship following the Italian Grand Prix, where he's pain-free now on the motorcycle. He's able to ride the bike much more like he wants. He's able to now take risks on the bike, and we're seeing something resembling the old Marc Marquez once again in these conditions. Of course, if we get a wet race, we know he's very good in those conditions. He proved it 8 days ago in Motegi, but also if we get potentially a flag-to-flag later on, we know he's the master of that particular format.
Yeah, as Lewis mentioned in the Japanese Grand Prix, a very wet Q2 session over in Motegi last weekend. His first pole position secured in 1,071 long days. His previous pole came in Motegi as well back in 2019 when he completely dominated and ran right to win his 8th World Championship that year.
ไม่คลาดเอกราชจะไม่ให้ใครคมขีสละเลือดทุกหยาดเป็นชาติผลิตทะเลิงประเทศชาติไทยทวีมีชัย
Wow, what a rendition of the Thai national anthem there then from Thachaya down in the Parc Ferme. The Thai fans appreciating that. We've got the Deputy Prime Minister here for the race action. A delayed MotoGP race. We are now 23 minutes after what we expected to be the start of round 17 of this year's World Championship.
There is Thachaya, who I had the joy of speaking to yesterday, shortly after he'd gone for his own lap in the BMW. Not quite as leery a lap as the one that we've just been watching in these conditions. Bit of a TikTok sensation, I'm reliably informed. Not that I've ever seen him as I've been scrolling through my For You page, but he is a particular sensation in this part of the world. Winner of The Voice over here in this part of the world. And you heard that voice in action there, performing the Thai national anthem. Now we await the main event of the afternoon getting underway here. Fabio Quartararo continues to be pretty relaxed. Maybe he is scrolling through some Thachaya on TikTok there as he sits in the Yamaha box. As many of his fans look on, it's actually brightening up now. Looking out of our commentary window, the sun's actually peeking through for once.
Can you believe it? There was almost shock on the face of the fans there, weren't they? As they get covered in some sunshine. A welcome respite from the rain conditions that have dominated proceedings here in Buriram over the last couple of hours or so. let's hope that the worst of the weather has passed through this part of northeastern Thailand. We're 400 kilometres away from Bangkok. About a 40-minute flight it is, or a 5-hour drive. Certainly not an easy drive in these kind of rain conditions. As we mentioned, the rural city, meaning the city of happiness.
Yeah, these are the kind of conditions we were sort of expecting at the start of the weekend, weren't we? When we arrived into Buriram, I arrived here from Bangkok on Wednesday following the pre-event, and it rained for virtually 36 hours, pretty much non-stop from the moment we arrived. It only really stopped raining on Friday morning, just as we started to go on the air for free practice 1 on Friday morning. And as Matt mentioned at the start of the broadcast, MotoGP, at least, have had dry conditions for every session. On Friday morning, it had dried up by the time that MotoGP went out there. We saw some slick tyre running at the end of the first Moto2 session of the weekend. So these MotoGP riders are going into this Grand Prix with no wet experience. They're only going to have that 10-minute window when the pit lane opens before they go to the grid to assess the conditions in the wet here around this Chang International Circuit.
Fantastic to be back in Thailand for the first time since 2019. Our first visit here was 4 years ago in 2018, when Thailand really announced itself as a top venue. Passionate motorsport fans in this part of the world, in their very first season, they were voted the best Grand Prix of the year by paddock members. What an accolade that was on our first visit to this Chang International Circuit. We are kind of at the back end of the rainy season, I'm told, that runs from kind of August to around this part of the year and early to mid-October. You can see there in the background the Prima Planet Ducati camp trying to keep a very close eye on their sophisticated weather radars and weather forecasts. What can you tell us down there, Jorge Martin? I wonder if Jorge can give us some good and positive news about a break in the weather conditions. What we can see about our commentary box window, nestled right at the top of the main grandstand. A fantastic vantage point that myself and Lewis, our colleagues Neil Morrison, Elliot York and Simon Crayfire have had here all weekend here at the Chang International Circuit. This is the best we've seen weather-wise for a good couple of hours. There is some sun now beating down on the start-finish straight. There's a few ominous clouds overlooking turn 3 off into the distance, but at the moment the good news is the rain has completely stopped.
So hopefully we won't be waiting too much longer, certainly before some news of a predicted start time for this Grand Prix. These Thai fans have had to wait. We've had to wait 3 years, of course, for MotoGP to arrive in this part of the world, but it will certainly be worth the wait once we get up and running. That is the sight we've been waiting to see for a couple of hours. The sun's starting to beat through, and as I mentioned earlier on, this circuit does dry remarkably quickly. We're not going to have a dry start, of course, to this Thai Grand Prix, but don't rule out the possibility of flag-to-flag conditions coming in, because, of course, with 25 laps of this Grand Prix, there is your confirmation directly on screen right now. Pit lane will open at 3:35 local time. It will be open for 10 minutes, so pit lane will open in 8 minutes time. The race will start at 5 to the hour, 15:55 local time, so that's 28 minutes from now for a 25-lap MotoGP race.
The news we've all been waiting for then here in Thailand, the best possible news as the marshals continue just to move some of the standing water that's on the surface down at turn number 3. We are going to get some race action here. 1 lap cut off the original race distance. It will be a 25-lap OR Thailand Grand Prix, round 17 of this year's MotoGP World Championship. Fabio Quartararo leads it, looking for a first victory since the pre-summer break at the Sachsenring in Germany. He has not led a single lap in the Grand Prix in Assen, Silverstone, Red Bull Ring, Misano, Aragon and Motegi since. There's a legacy of that first lap collision with Marc Marquez in Aragon a couple of weeks ago. You can see there the abrasion marks and the scars on Fabio Quartararo's chest and stomach.
He's certainly wearing the scars of battle this year. He certainly has had to battle in 2022 against this fleet of Ducatis, and of course Aleix Espargaro, who's kept Aprilia in the game throughout this season. Of course, this weekend has been a rather poor one for Aprilia. Marc Marquez limbering up, ready to go racing, so clearly no necessarily problems with the right arm there, is there?
He's just showing off now, isn't he, Marc Marquez? Yeah, get down and give me 10, Mark. There you go, just getting himself limbered up, stretching out for this Grand Prix. I think there is the most avid Marc Marquez fan in the whole world right now. She's fully decked out in a 93 t-shirt, 93 cap. She's got the 93 flag. And I think she's screaming so loud I can actually hear her in our headsets here being picked up by the microphones. Great to see, though. It's fantastic that Marc Marquez was back to full fitness in time to race in Southeast Asia and race in Japan as well. He's so popular in this part of the world. The Japanese fans appreciated that magnificent pole position 8 days ago. Jack Miller also getting himself limbered up, loosening the muscles, getting himself relaxing in the zone. Likewise, and Bastianini, because we are now, less than 20 minutes away, 25 minutes away from the start of this Grand Prix. Finally, we can hear the MotoGP engines roaring into life down in pit lane here in Buriram.
Yeah, Marc Marquez has certainly got his serious game face on now. A sharp, deep intake of breath for the 8 times world champion, who will surely be sat there in the Repsol Honda box thinking, I've got a serious chance here this afternoon. He has got absolutely nothing to lose in this Grand Prix. No World Championship thoughts on his mind. He's just going to go out there and push in this 25-lap Grand Prix. Of course, won't be as physical on the body in these wet conditions, which will be good news for Marc Marquez. Pecco Bagnaia, who's taking on some final refreshments before we get underway.
That's how Italian is that? 20 minutes before the start of a MotoGP race in really tricky conditions. Pecco Bagnaia loading up with an espresso. He guzzles it down. That's brilliant. He's got to be a little bit apprehensive, though, hasn't he, Pecco Bagnaia, when you think about how much he struggled so badly in that Mandalika Grand Prix in the rain conditions, and limped home in a very disappointing 15th place, and then a nightmare in the rain conditions last weekend in Motegi, where we remind you, he described his pace as totally unacceptable. No feedback, no feeling from the Michelin rain tyres. He feels like there's been some slight balance, some slight geometry change to that GP22. So strong, wasn't he, in the rain conditions, particularly last year. But these will be nervy, intense moments for Pecco Bagnaia in conditions that have not been to his liking in 2022.
And in the third corner, if you like, of this World Championship battle, Aleix Espargaro, this might just save his bacon this weekend. He's been off the pace, or Aprilia, more to the point, have been off the pace throughout this Grand Prix weekend. Aleix Espargaro starting 13th on the grid. Maverick Vinales, who every time we've cut to him on track has been waving his hands and angrily gesturing at himself and at his bike. He starts 17th on the grid. The Aprilia team will be certainly relieved to see that the wet conditions are prevailing here for race day, because in the dry, the best they could hope for was maybe a top 10. Certainly, damage limitation was the name of the game for Vinales and Espargaro. Perhaps these wet conditions will allow them to perhaps salvage their weekend.
Well, he's fueled himself with some caffeine. He now needs to fuel himself for what he hopes will be 25 points here in Buriram. Simon Crayford just reporting from pit lane. It has just started to rain again, but normal rain. Nothing like the torrential rain which we've seen disrupt the schedule so far here this weekend, as Marc Marquez's Repsol Honda is prepped and ready to go. In go the earplugs, blocking out the noise. There goes the nose tape for Jack Miller just to help him breathe in this 25-lap Grand Prix. You've not needed a MotoGP bike, you need a jet ski so far this afternoon, but we are going to get, hopefully, fingers crossed, an uninterrupted 25-lap Grand Prix of Thailand here. You can just see the anxious pacing around, the nervy pacing around the factory Ducati garage for their technical guru, Gigi Dall'Igna. He knows Pecco Bagnaia, his Achilles heel in 2022, has been in rain conditions.
Not the same necessarily you could say for Alex Marquez there on screen, although he's got an uphill challenge today. He starts 20th on the grid and he knows his way around in wet conditions. Here is how the grid lines up then. It's Marco Bezzecchi on his first ever pole position from Jorge Martin, and Pecco Bagnaia, another Ducati lockout. Fabio Quartararo starts 4th ahead of another trio of Ducatis, with Johan Zarco 5th, Enea Bastianini 6th, and Jack Miller, our most recent winner in Motegi 1 week ago, starting from 7th. Marc Marquez, watch him closely from 8th on the grid. Luca Marini, who's been very quick in the dry this weekend, starts from 9th. Alex Rins 10th ahead of the factory KTMs of Miguel Oliveira, our winner in our last wet race, of course, in Indonesia this season, and Brad Binder. He starts 12th. Aleix Espargaro, can he salvage his weekend in the wet from 13th? Franco Morbidelli is just behind him, and Cal Crutchlow completes row 5. Ralph Hernandez, despite his stomach upset this weekend, a career best 16th ahead of Maverick Vinales and Raul's teammate Remy Gardner. Good qualifying for the Tech 3 squad. Paul Espargaro is 19th on the grid, with Alex Marquez starting 20th. Fabio Di Gianantonio who was one of the 7 Ducati riders, of course, to have a pole position this season now. He was 21st in qualifying yesterday. Tetsuta Nagashima, he starts 22nd. He's the injury replacement for Taka Nakagami this weekend. Darren Binder starts 23rd. Of course, he was sensational in the wet conditions of Mandalika when he finished inside the top 10 after a battle with his brother. And bringing up the rear in 24th is Danilo Petrucci. He certainly knows what it takes to win in the wet. He did that at Le Mans back in 2020. He will be riding the factory Suzuki in place of the injured Juan Mir. So we're less than a minute to go before the pit lane opens. 50 seconds to go before the riders will be allowed out on track, and the pit lane will be open, as you can see, for 10 minutes, which is why Fabio Quartararo didn't have his crash helmet on yet. It's not like the quick restart procedure that we saw in action in Moto2 earlier on, when you only have 60 seconds to get out there on track. They will have 10 minutes, and it will actually be, even though it's untimed, a crucial 10 minutes this for the riders to go out on track and get an early indication of just where the particularly troublesome spots are, just what the grip levels are like, before they finally pull up on the grid for this 25-lap Thai Grand Prix, which is just 20 minutes away.
A bit like Moto2, wasn't it, earlier on this afternoon? It's going to be a case of fortune favouring the brave. With big risk, potentially comes big rewards. Frankie Morbidelli, he heads out the field then. Pit lane opening in exactly 1 second. It's open right now. The green light then waves, and the green flag at the bottom end of pit lane. Pit lane closes in 10 minutes time. What you're going to see here is the riders, they'll go out and then they'll come through pit lane, won't they, filter through, just to get in probably 2 or 3 laps minimum to assess and evaluate the track conditions. You've got to feel that's going to be the instructions. Marc Marquez heads out on circuit, so does Pecco Bagnaia. What lies in store for Bagnaia? Been so weak in rain conditions so far in 2022, and now going into complete new territory here. Previously in our 2 visits to Buriram, I think we had one slightly wet session. It wasn't a full wet session. FP3 in 2019, a session that was topped by former MotoGP rain master Andrea Dovizioso. So this is very much a journey into the unknown. So little wet track experience for these riders to call upon in the past here, with just that one sort of damp session it was in FP3 back here in 2019. This is quite clearly, as you can see from these live pictures, with the pit lane now open, a full wet and very soaked Chang International Circuit.
And this is the wettest part of it, the run down through the left kink of turn 2 into turn 3. We've got plenty of Yamaha flags and t-shirts in the grandstand just below us, who will be cheering on Fabio Quartararo and Franco Morbidelli here this afternoon, as the personnel now filter onto the grid. As Matt mentioned, they won't be able to come round, of course, and if they do pull up onto the grid, they will have to stay there. So if they do want to get some experience of this track and make the full use of these 10 minutes, they will file straight up pit lane. We're in the infield section of the lap now, on board with Marc Marquez. Of course, he won't be pushing to his absolute maximum, but he will be pushing hard enough to get a little bit of an idea of what the grip levels are out there. Pecco Bagnaia with the clear visor too, and here they come straight up pit lane on the exit of turn 11. And of course, if we do have a flag to flag race later on, if the conditions dry enough that someone feels brave enough to go out on slicks, this is the route they will take. The pit lane entry is right on the outside of turn 11.
So as we expected, every single rider to a man taking the advantage of that extended time before the 20-minute grid procedure, coming through pit lane to get in at least another couple of laps to assess these conditions. In the past, we heard from Aleix Espargaro, didn't we, in the delayed start after the Moto2 race. Simon Crafar, Aleix Espargaro did say this is going to be all about who can understand quickest the track conditions, the grip levels. In the past, riders who've been famed for adapting quickly in those kind of scenarios, certainly Jack Miller falls into that category. So does Marc Marquez. Marquez has always been so good, hasn't he, particularly in a flag to flag scenario when the track conditions change either from wet to dry or dry to wet. He's always been able to judge quickly where he can push, where he can attack, and of course out of championship contention by a mile, this guy can take the big risks. You feel this is set up for a Banzai Marquez coming through from the middle of that third row in 8th place.
You saw him there just shaking his arm out. Of course, it's that right arm that he's had operated on. He did take a little bit of a time out in free practice 4 yesterday afternoon in that 30-minute session. He did pull into the pits and sit there for around 5 or 10 minutes. That was a physical decision. That was a decision he made to try and manage his strength, manage his fitness, and try not to get too tired, of course, because he had to go through qualifying 1 yesterday, Marc Marquez, after a mistake, crucially, at the end of pre-practice 3 when he ran wide at turn 12. We almost saw 2 of the Ducatis making contact there. It looked like Bastianini and Bezzecchi, who've made contact here before, let's not forget, in the Moto3 World Championship, almost coming together on the sighting lap.
The Beast and Bez getting a little bit busy, weren't they, on that sighting lap here? I don't think Bastianini would have appreciated that one too much, as Bezzecchi was attacking hard just to find out what the grip levels are like going through that at turn number 3.
Quattararo and Aleix Espargaro going side by side for a moment there as well. So, yeah, the riders are exploring as much as they can, given what's at their disposal. Of course, the last thing they want to do at this stage is have a crash. We're watching out of our commentary box window. Frankie Morbidelli has pulled onto the grid, so he's clearly decided that the 2 laps round to the grid are enough. A number of other riders, the factory Ducati of Jack Miller is coming round to the grid. So too Nagashima, so too Miguel Oliveira. But we have seen a number of other riders back up pit lane. Here's what happened at turn 3.
This is on the sighting lap. That was like the last lap of the Grand Prix, wasn't it, really? You can see there, now Bastianini certainly not appreciative of that move by Marco Bezzecchi. This is not a bad position here for Fabio Quattararo to be in, to be honest, because he's just being able to understand just how bad the spray is and what the visibility will be like. I just wonder whether this is a deliberate ploy by Quattararo, just to find himself in that group, just to sort of understand how bad the spray might affect him in the early part of the Grand Prix. Of course, he starts this shortened by 1 lap, 25-lap race in Buriram. 3 Ducatis ahead of him, 3 Ducatis behind him. The last man to leave pit lane by the looks of it, leaving it very, very late, because the pit lane closes in 5 minutes' time, is Prima Pramac Racing's Johan Zarco, who was quickest in FP2 and in FP4, albeit in dry conditions on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, he's probably got the luxury, if he wants it, of coming round one more time and coming into the pits. He'll have 2 minutes, roughly, by the time he comes back around again. So if he did want to go around one more time, he does have that luxury. But by the time he then completes that subsequent lap, he would have to pull up onto the grid. So Marco Bezzecchi comes into pole position. This is a moment that he'll have been dreaming about for many, many years, being on pole position in a MotoGP race. Alex Rins, another one who's leaving it a little bit late to head out on track. But Marco Bezzecchi has had to wait longer than he expected today. Certainly not good for the nerves, but Bezzecchi pulling into pole position. And of course, with the wet conditions for the start of this Thai Grand Prix, any kind of form book that we had going to this Grand Prix goes completely out the window.
So there you can see the data engineer for Aleix Espargaro's factory Aprilia team. I'm sure after the big, costly human error last weekend that they'll be punching in the right settings, the right mappings here today. Of course, let's not forget 7 days ago, ahead of that dry Japanese Grand Prix, a big own goal from Aprilia in terms of the World Championship, with the eco map, the fuel-saving map, being left on Aprilia as RSGP. We're getting thunder and lightning,
just saw a massive fork of lightning in the distance over past turn 3. So perhaps some more rain might be on its way. The start of this Grand Prix is just under 15 minutes away. Cal Crutchlow starts from the 5th row of the grid, 15th position on the grid. Let's get his pre-race thoughts with Simon Crafar.
Carl, great job in qualifying even after the painful fall. Carl's just asked me he wants to talk to an IRTA guy for a moment. He said 1 second. He's warning the IRTA guy about a couple of patches, I think, and he's going to come to us. Carl, great job in qualifying, especially after the painful fall, but now it's wet. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's the same for everybody. It's not particularly nice out there, but I feel okay. I don't feel too bad. I would have preferred a dry race because I think we had a great pace and a good chance today.
Good luck.
Cheers.
Yeah, thanks to Cal Crutchlow, thanks to Simon Crafar. Crutchlow starts from the back of row 5 in 15th place. Look at that again in our headset here. That's just a rattle of Jorge Martin, hasn't it? A big, big clap of thunder, obviously off in the distance to Jorge Martin's right-hand side. Let's keep everything crossed that we don't get any further delays. We are already 43 minutes behind what we hope for our scheduled race start.
Well, I can guarantee you that those noises didn't come from the Thunder Castle, which is just out in the distance, the football stadium of the local football team here, Buriram United. But yeah, we're just closing in now with Alex Rins just in front of us, coming onto the grid now. Less than 2 minutes to go before the start.
There's a bit of a summit going on here on the grid. This is Fabio Quartararo and Aleix Espargaro, title contenders in 2022. They are in deep discussion, aren't they, with Italian Luca Marini. Now then, there is Diego Ghibellini as well there. I can just see in the background our colleague Jack Appleyard on the ground trying to find out exactly what's going on here.
He's live on Instagram right now if you want to open your phones and tune into what's going on there.
So what is going on then? What was the reason why Fabio Quartararo, Aleix Espargaro and Luca Marini came together at the front of that grid just for a chat about obviously current track conditions? Factory Yamaha boss, Yamaha Motor Racing Director, Managing Director Lynn Jarvis also down there talking to Fabio Quartararo. You can just see there the rain is starting to fall again. This was a few moments ago when the pit lane opened. Well, it just feels like this is a very, very high pressure situation. There's been no wet track time all weekend. The only wet track time these riders have been those 2 exploratory laps on that extended 10-minute build-up to the delayed grid start procedure. Tense moments indeed, particularly when you're fighting for the World Championship. So much at stake, in particular for Pecco Bagnaia on the front row for the factory Ducati team. Let's hear some thoughts, I'm sure, from a very anxious and nervous Ducati Lenovo team manager Davide Tardozzi with Simon.
Exactly what I was thinking, Matt. Davide, I came to see you because you're an ex-World Championship rider, team manager for a long time. Tell us, what are your concerns right now?
My concerns is for the guys on the back, because at corner 3, breakout corner 3 and number 4 is too wet and you see nothing. So quite dangerous, but anyway, they are professional riders. I guess they know what to do.
A little bit different subject is your guys have had all the time in the dry. How strong do you think they will be in the wet?
I think that some Ducati riders will be very fast. I think that Jack can ride for the win. We do expect that Pecco recover his bad race in Japan and his not good performance on the wet on qualify, and back the Pecco that we know that was very fast on the wet. So we'll see. We have we was waiting to have some practice on the wet just to be sure about that, but we will discover you during the race.
Thank you, Davide.
Yeah, thanks to Davide Tardozzi. Then Fabio Quartararo now having a little meeting as well with his fellow Frenchman Johann Zarco. It seems like after those couple of laps that they did before coming to the grid, the main area of concern for the riders was on the run down to turn 3 and then the exit powering towards turn 4. Too much spray, visibility problems. That's been the prime concern as we head to what we hope will be a race start in just under 10 minutes time here in Burra. We can see there Loris Capirossi and Franco Uncini out there speaking to the riders, arming themselves with all the latest information before we get a call on where this race will start in just under 10 minutes time. Let's go back down on the grid. Simon Crayfar with Yamaha Motor Racing Managing Director Lynn Jarvis. Down to you, Simon.
Yes. Lynn, please tell us what you're thinking going into this one.
Well, like everybody else, I think, is whether it's the right time to start now or not. I mean, it's actually still raining here on the grid. It's a lot drier than it was a half hour ago, but we see lightning strikes in the distance. So safety has to be the primary concern. The riders are discussing. Capirossi was here just now, Uncini. So the question is, do they delay it or not? And that's... safety is the most important thing.
Okay, and looking at competitiveness, if it does go ahead, how do you feel?
For me, there are some guys that have nothing to lose, and there are some very, very good wet riders here. I think Fabio is very competent in the wet these days, so we're not worried about that, but you know, it's a matter of finishing the race and not making any serious mistake. I think that's the key point for all of the 3 that are in the hunt. But I think the top 5 will be different people today.
Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah, thanks to Lynn Jarvis, as he mentioned, as we've touched upon in the build-up to this delayed Thai Grand Prix. So many riders in this race that have nothing to lose in terms of the championship. Well, that man there, he fits the profile. Jack Miller, doesn't he? Always a strong wet weather rider. Missed out on the podium with the 4th place in Mandalika. but still a very accomplished wet weather rider. This man we know will come charging through. Marc Marquez, he's appeared on the big screen, he's getting a big introduction from our circuit announcer. I've got to say full credit as well to the circuit announcer here at the Chang International Circuit, because he's kept the fans entertained. He's continued to whip them up into a frenzy ahead of this delayed 25-lap MotoGP race, which, we remind you, is due to get underway at 15:55 local time here in Thailand. Whether that remains the case, well, that remains to be seen, with some riders expressing concerns about standing water and visibility problems going into turn 3, on the exit of turn 3, and that fast sweep towards the blind entry turn number 4.
Of course, every rider has got their own particular interests, and you can understand the different points of view up and down there, and you can fully understand Aleix Espargaro and Fabio Quartararo with a world championship at stake, who are perhaps a little bit more nervous and a little bit more cautious of going racing in these conditions. Jack Miller just had a little smirk there when the latest rumble of thunder came over us. He's not too bothered. Daniele Bastianini with a smile as well as he gets ready to don the crash helmet and go racing. He had a bit of a shocking time, it has to be said, in the wet conditions back in Indonesia at the start of the season, of course, which he went into as the World Championship leader, fell all the way down to the back of the field early in that Grand Prix. He did recover back up to 11th in that Indonesian Grand Prix, but he's certainly not one of the riders you'd have at the top of the list of wet weather specialists. Fabio Quartararo, competent was the word Lynn Jarvis used. Confident? Who knows? Well, what was the big handicap for Enea Bastianini in that wet Mandalika Grand Prix? It was all down to the fact that he could not see a thing. Bear in mind, mid-pack, having qualified in 5th place, didn't make a great start, and it was just poor visibility that blunted his charge back through the pack. That's going to be a concern, isn't it, for the likes of Marc Marquez, Jack Miller and Luca Marini, starting from that 3rd row. If you're kind of deeper than 6th place, really, the visibility is going to be a significant factor, particularly in the first laps of this Grand Prix. Even further back than that, well, then it's a real major headache for the likes of Alex Rins, Miguel Oliveira and Brad Binder. 3 riders normally very, very strong in rain conditions, and 3 riders in particular not thinking about the World Championship, not thinking about points for places. I'll start delayed then. Here's another update then. In Buriram, we were hoping to get the race underway in just under 5 minutes' time. With just another lightning bolt lit up our commentary box here at the top of the main grandstand. Myself and Lewis are just out of your picture here at the back of that main grandstand. And the start then has been delayed yet again due to safety conditions. There are thunderstorms in the area, in the region of northeastern Thailand. Daniele Ramagnoli, Jorge Martin's crew chief, he's all suited and booted, ready to go, but they're going to inform him now that the start will be delayed. We're going to bring you updates on when we will be getting the action underway very, very quickly, but as you can see on your screens, the race has been delayed due to safety conditions. The rain certainly not falling anywhere near as torrential as it was at the start of the Moto2 race, or during that Moto2 race, which was eventually stopped and then abandoned with half points awarded. So the handyman, as it said on the back of his helmet there, Danilo Petrucci, of course he's seen all this before. What a year he's had. He's been right around the world, and that's just in the last 7 days. Has the Italian started the year, of course, taking successful wins in stage races of the Dakar. He's then competed regularly in Moto America this season, narrowly missed out on the championship to America's Jay Gagne, and then quickly from Alabama all the way to Buriram this weekend for a substitute appearance aboard the factory Suzuki. So he's certainly been clocking up the air miles this year, has the Italian.
Well, this what we hope will be a short delayed start to this MotoGP race. Talk about cranking up the tension here and the pressure in MotoGP. Start delayed, and as soon as we have any information on when we will be underway here for that 25-lap OR Grand Prix of Thailand, we will bring it to you, of course. It looks like they are just about getting ready to clear the grid. We've got the circuit staff ready to jump in the BMW safety car, so we may well be getting the 3-minute board coming up very, very shortly. A very pensive-looking poleman, Marco Bezzecchi, a face full of concentration and focus for Enea Bastianini. Still, of course, in World Championship contention, albeit 49 points behind Fabio Quartararo at the top of the standings.
We understand that there was some sort of medical emergency on the grid for somebody, which is the reason for this delay. So the safety conditions that you can see at the bottom of your screens are necessitating this delay to the start. But the grid, as you can see, is now clearing. Aleix Espargaro pulling his gloves on. The safety car begins to pull away. Just the pressure, the tension, as if there wasn't enough of it with just 4 races of this 2022 MotoGP season remaining. Such tense conditions, wet conditions for the start of this Thailand Grand Prix, and a World Championship that hangs in the balance.
So the safety car sets off then, as we're just a couple of minutes away from nearly an hour delay to this Chang International Circuit battle here in 2022. A World Championship perfectly poised in many respects with 4 rounds remaining. Here is your World Championship leader, the man who still holds on to the prize from 2021, number 20 Fabio Quartararo, 18 points clear of Pecco Bagnaia in the title chase. Bagnaia in turn another 7 points clear of Aleix Espargaro.
Let's go Fabio, they say. Well, he's going to be going very, very shortly. That is the man who we're looking to beat him today. Of course, the mindset between Quartararo and Bagnaia will be significant. It will be fascinating. Will they both go for broke? Bagnaia said he would yesterday when he thought it was going to be a dry Grand Prix. But given these conditions, will Bagnaia and Quartararo simply have eyes on each other?
So tough to predict, so tough to call who's going to prevail here in Thailand. Will it be Marco Bezzecchi backing up his career first pole position in MotoGP? We've got wet weather specialists galore in this 25-lap race. There's the final big pre-race pep talk from one of his mechanics there at Mooney VR46. Wet weather specialists like Johan Zarco, Jack Miller, Marc Marquez, Miguel Oliveira, our winner of our only full wet MotoGP race so far here in 2022. It did rain, didn't it? A sprinkling of rain in that Dutch TT in Assen, where Marco Bezzecchi, to his credit, was very, very strong, braving it on those slick tyres as he kept the pressure on Pecco Bagnaia. The warm-up that then finally underway here.